Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to continue our look at painting Necrons from the Indomitus box set, and in this video we are going to take a look at the Canoptek Reanimator and the little orbs that are adorning its head and kind of protruding from its body, as well as in its central core. To get us started, we're going to use some Nagroth Night. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette, and we are going to use a generous amount of water in our brush to thin the color out ever so slightly, and we are going to apply two thin coats onto these areas. Now, this model was used in the previous example to show weathering on top of chrome, and so this model obviously it was done in the typical fashion, which it was done with the chrome. You can click on that video up there to see how the chrome was done, and it was pretty straightforward. Xeris Purple is next, and this is after those areas have thoroughly dried. We are going to slap a little bit onto our palette. We're going to use a kind of older synthetic brush here, and the reason for this is this particular technique we're going to use, I really don't want to use up my good sable-haired brushes, so I'm going to use synthetic, and this is oftentimes where I use synthetic brushes. And as you may notice, I am using a stippling motion to apply this color, and it's really just right out of the bottle, no thinners needed, just the residual dampness of the bristles. And stippling is basically a back and forth motion. Some of the motion I'm doing is kind of side to side, as in just kind of scrubbing the paint around. I'm not too worried about some of the darker paint showing through, as I do want some of that color variance that you do get when you are applying the paint in this kind of haphazardly kind of motion. I'm also applying this layer of color on to probably, I don't know, it's probably about 3/4 of the surface area of each of those orbs. It's pushed the purple back, way back towards where the clasps are hanging on to the orbs. And I also do this on the orbs inside the core of the body as well. Once I've done one quick layer, then I lay down another layer, and I'm not looking for even coverage here. We are just looking to create a ever slight texture. Now, if you're applying the paint in a fairly heavy motion and in a heavy fashion, you will have to be mindful of that, because you can end up creating like this really rough and bumpy surface, but that's not a huge issue. So if you do end up doing that, you'll be fine. Next, we're going to take some Xeris Purple, and we are going to mix it with some Emperor's Children. And with this mixture, we are going to go about roughly 1-to-1 mix ratio. And we're also going to use just the dampness of the brush to thin the color out ever so slightly. We're sticking with our synthetic brush, and we are going to continue to apply it in this stippling motion. Now, I'm concentrating more of the color towards the center of each of the little orbs, slowly building out towards the outer portions where we had gone with our Xeris Purple layer. So we're only going about maybe just over halfway of the surface, but concentrating most of the color in towards the central point. What we're going for here is kind of a light sourcing, kind of a mystical orb kind of look. I'm also not going to do this in the fashion that I have been doing the rest of the Necrons in my collection, as the way I kind of imagine this guy here is he's kind of older. He's the caretaker, as it were, and his lights might be a little dim in comparison to the other models in the faction where we've used the fluorescent pink. And I figured, you know what, let's have a bit of a break from the fluorescent pink, but we'll stay within the realms, and we'll also have this so that it feels, pretty much the same as the rest of the faction. So we're slowly building that out in towards the center. We're going to let that dry, and we're going to come back in with some more Emperor's Children. We are going to mix this in, so it's roughly a 2 Emperor's Children to 1 Xeris Purple. We're going to use a bit of water here to thin the color out ever so slightly, and we're also switching over to our detail brush, because now we're going to start to get a little bit precise. We're not hammering the brush onto the surface to kind of scrub the paint around. We are being very deliberate at this point, and we're creating a little texture of little dots around the surface, as you may notice there. I'm trying to concentrate most of these dots in towards the central area of each of those little orbs, but I'm also not having them right up against each other or, you know, very densely collected or anything like that. I'm not looking for that kind of effect here. It's more of a sparkling, as it were. And on the bigger one here, you can see some of them will get a little knocked together, and, you know, I mean, that's not a huge issue. But also what I'm doing is I'm kind of laying these brighter tones down where I'm seeing more of the brighter colors. So if there's any of the darker Nagroth Night showing through, I'm allowing that to remain in place, and I'm building brighter colors around. So I'm kind of following what I've done with the stippling motion so that we create this very uneven, kind of wispy, ethereal type of thing going on here. I don't know. We can imagine whatever reasoning here. And then here is a second layering, and I was just going around and picking out some of the extra little points here. I also do this exact same effect on the orbs in the central core of the body as well. But otherwise, that is pretty much it for that color. Where, you know, it's starting to take shape now. We're getting this very, you know, highly textured look here. Emperor's Children is next, and it's all on its lonesome. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette. We're going to use the dampness of our brush. Well, pretty generous amount of dampness on the brush, really, just to thin the color out ever so slightly. We're sticking with our detail brush, and we're going to try to apply these little tiny little dots here inside where we had previously laid the little dots, and if we can lay them on top of previous dots, all the better. Again, we're just concentrating mostly within the center, so it really is not going to take too much time. We do want to make sure that we have a nice point on our brush so that we're getting nice even little dots. If you've kind of worked the brush into wedge where, you know, it's kind of a flat, you know, you drew through the palette once, turned it 180 and drew it through the palette and kind of created like this flat chisel shape, you end up creating little dashes, and so you're better off drawing your brush through the palette and giving a slight turn as you do so, and that will make sure that it comes to a nice point. Here you can see I'm just simply laying these little dots, and of course I'm not too worried about going out into other areas of Xeris Purple or the Nagroth Night. Not too heavily, of course, but tiny little dots here and there. Again, it's kind of like this little sparkling kind of thing. I'm trying to think of an example of what this was kind of like, and I can't. The idea has escaped me at the moment. I just kind of went for it. I've done a very similar effect to this in the past, and I figured I might as well show something like that again. And of course, for everybody who doesn't want to meddle with fluorescent paints, as I've been going kind of nuts with lately, I figured I'd give you guys a bit of a break. Emperor's Children is next with some White Scar. With this, we are going to mix these in roughly a 1-to-1 mix ratio, slap that onto our palette, thin the colors out just ever so slightly with the dampness of the brush, and then very carefully here we are going to apply these just right into the center. It's only a couple dots here and there. It's just to really create the illumination within the central portion of each of the little orbs, and, you know, try not to get too crazy with them. Some of the bigger ones you can lay a few more dots down. You can see like the eye on the head, I did not lay too many dots down, and whereas on these bigger orbs you can see we're laying a few more down. And also you can see as some of the darker tones are showing through as we built them out, like kind of this, you know, these varying tones. It's kind of random. We just run with it, and, you know, it's not any kind of particular type of pattern. It was just, I was just running with the randomness of it all. Here you can see on the orbs and the interior cores are just, you know, again, following pretty much the same procedure all the way through. Initially, I was thinking of building it up really intense through the centers and just kind of create the stippling, but then I kind of decided, no, it looked kind of fun with this whole cloudy aspect to it. So that's where we're at with this. Next, we're going to take some transparent purple. This is from Pro Acryl. This is their transparency line, and so I slap a little bit onto the palette. I grab a generous amount of water onto my brush, thin the color down ever so slightly, and I lay it down on the eye, and I'm just going around the outside, leaving the center untouched so that I get this color and transition throughout the outer portions of the eye. I found that it's a little bit too heavy, so I thinned it out just a little bit more with some water, and then I found that it was at the right, you know, density for me, and I basically just follow the outside perimeter of each of the little orbs and allow that purple to kind of marry those transitions together and just resaturate that color and just build a little bit more intensity. And you can see how even though it's sitting on top of that really dark tone, we can still see those purple hues, and it almost looks like a blue hue sitting there. And that's really what we're looking for. Again, if you lay a little bit too much down, you can quickly draw off your brush, grab it with just a little bit of dampness up, and feather that color out, and you should be able to correct that if you do end up kind of laying a little bit too much down into those areas. On each of the orbs, I just, again, follow the outside perimeter and just lay the color down, leaving the centers untouched. And that is the basic effect there. You can see how it has this kind of dim quality to the orbs, not like the brightness of the other ones. You can leave them matte as such, or, and this is what I like to do, I'll take some technical art coat, I'll take a brush with a little bit of dampness to it, just to thin the art coat out a little bit, and begin layering in the art coat varnish. This is a gloss varnish that sits on top. This is going to give us a nice glassy finish. One of the things I really enjoy doing with art coat is I will apply one layer somewhat heavily, but not too heavily, but I just get most of the areas. I wait until that is completely dry, and then I will come in with another layering, thinned out with a bit more water, and let it saturate really on the surface, and that gives you this really glassy look. And this is what it looks like after 2 layers of art coat. One was applied somewhat heavily, and the next one was applied more generously onto the surface, but had a bit of water mixed in, and you can see how it gives you that nice glassy quality. You can actually see the lights from the cameras and stuff in the reflection. That's what that little circle is you're seeing inside there. And that is it. That is the orbs for the Canoptek Reanimator. It's a little bit dimmer than the other ones, but I kind of was the vibe I was going for. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below, and you're going to be helping me out tremendously. And there's varying tiers of support, so a huge thank you to everybody who does and everybody who's considering it. Take care of your brushes. They will take care of you.